Aisha, thank you very much for joining me today. I have entitled this,
You're very well.
thank you. I have entitled this session, Racism Fireworks. Yeah, exactly. This is completely unscripted because Aisha and I, as friends, we have a lot of conversations. And there's some fireworks, wouldn't you say, once in a while?
Yeah, I will say, yeah, yes, you are one of those friends that we're still friends, even though we disagree. And I can't even say agree to disagree because I don't agree with her and she don't agree with me, but we disagree.
Exactly. Yeah. We there's one thing in which we agree, and that is that we love each other and we love Jesus. And sometimes that's the extent of our agreement.
Amen. And to be honest, that's the most important agreement. We
Absolutely.
love the Lord with all our heart, and everything else is secondary.
Absolutely. Anisha, we have a saying here in our family of YouTube, and it is that we are always better when we're together. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that I wanted to invite you is because I always tell people, hey, leave comments, disagree, but let's stay civil and respectful because at the end of the day, we're all different people. We're all entitled to have our own opinions, but we can keep civility and love. And I think that our relationship is a perfect example of that. So that's plenty for an introduction. You've introduced yourself, and now let's get some fireworks going. And so, Aisha, as you know, our country has
All right.
the United States. Obviously, you're American. Is experiencing unprecedented times, at least publicly. We know that those times are not totally unprecedented. And I want you to walk us through your life a little bit as it relates to racial relations. I want you to do most of the talking. I might interrupt you here and there for some clarification, but walk us through your life as it relates to racial relationships.
Oh, I feel like a chill just came over me. Since the whole George Floyd death, there hasn't been a day where I've not felt this chill and just very emotional. It has, as you can see, I've not slept. Literally, I've not slept. I go to bed thinking about what's going on all over the world in terms of racism, but more apparently in the United States, because that's where my family lived. I'm an African American, and it has just caused me such. I there's no word to describe what I'm feeling, considering that I'm so far removed because I'm over here in Germany. So you would think that I think there are people who think it shouldn't bother me because I'm not living in the United States. But as a Black, brown woman, it affects me so deeply because this is something that I've seen and experienced my whole life. I'm 46 years old. I'll be 47 in August. And I feel like all of our Black, brown people's names should be our first name, our last name, and racism. Because when you look at me, many people, believe it or not, they don't see my first name, they don't see my last name. All they see is, wow, she's Black or she's brown. She's of color. So it's like people have defined you, and it is really hard to get out of that box. And it's not even necessary that I want to get out of that box. I want the United States and the rest of the world to get out of racism. Um, which I will tell you, with everything that has happened, I want to believe with every fiber, every being of my, everything that I exist of, that things are going to change. I don't think it will, because it's been like this for 46 years of my life. We have these peaks and people forget. The media doesn't report on it anymore. It's not mainstream news anymore. As you can even see in social media, the topics are changing. People are going back to posting cats, and it will die off. And when it dies off, the people who have died due to racist acts will also die off again because their names for many will be forgotten. But I hope that that won't be the case. But I don't believe it. And being of a person of faith, that is a very hard thing for me to wrap my head around because, as the Bible says, small as a mustard seed is faith. And without faith, how can you have hope? And
Exactly.
if you have no hope, are you kind of saying you don't have faith? So it again has kept me up a lot. I have cried, I think, the most tears that I've ever cried in my 46 years because I feel like it's a volcano. This has just all been bubbling up, and the volcano just exploded. And it exploded with many, many things, not just to George Floyd, but so many ripples that have happened over the last couple of months. Breonna Taylor, Arvery, just, over and over.
And let me just interject there, Aisha. You were talking about how people are back posting cats. The other day, I did a little experiment. I have been one of those that has refused to let the topic go, and I have been posting a series of microaggressions, speaking about my feelings. And you and I had joked a little bit about this, had sadly joked a little bit about this, because we know that you and I have a very strong following of friends and acquaintances on social media. And you and I had commented how our posts that have to do with racism and whatever have gotten maybe one like, two likes, one comment, two comments, if that. And so, I'm in the same situation. But I think 2 days ago, I decided to change my pictures, my profile pictures, which I do on a regular basis. Not on a regular basis, but every month and a half, every 2 months, I have a bunch of pictures that my brother takes and I change my pictures. Girl, I posted new pictures in less than 24 hours. I had almost 100 likes. And it was hard for me to accept the likes and the compliments of the same people that have seen me cry and speak against racism and speak about what our country is going through and chose to be completely silent. That's very sad, isn't it? It's a reflection of our society.
It's a reflection of our society, and it's a reflection of who people are. I think I don't need in the closet friends, that won't comment publicly on any of my social media sites where I've mentioned anything that has to do with racism, but they want to come in through the back door privately and send me private messages. And while I'm thankful that these friends are reaching out and asking me how I'm doing privately, it causes concern that they're more concerned at the perception of what others think than taking a stand, in my opinion, and doing the right thing and standing up and saying, you're right. And if they don't believe I'm right, that they can acknowledge publicly that I'm hurting. We talked about this too, about, we agree, disagree. And while there are people who don't believe certain racisms, you still cannot deny the fact when I tell you something is racist, or I tell you that I am hurting because of all the racism that America and the world has seen over the last month and a half, that if you can't even acknowledge and say, I am so sorry you're hurting, I don't understand, but just know that I'm praying for you. Just something, Jenny. And there has been nothing. A friend of mine posted 3 crickets. He said, girl, it's like crickets. I follow some pretty influential people. I have connection with some celebrities in the United States. And it's interesting, even on their websites, on their post, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, like their stuff. But if they post some racism, the fact that you even count how many number of likes they have or how many comments they have is shocking. And it made me question, are these really my friends if they cannot validate what I'm saying as a African-American woman, that one, I've experienced racism throughout my life. And I'm not George Floyd or Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery. I'm not any of those people, but they are my people. And I mourn with them and I'm sad for them. And it's been an injustice that has happened to them. And that you just have predominantly white people who are just like, no, I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't see it as racism. Or something else we talked about, that people now are trying to take away on social media from these very, very profiled cases and compare it with things like, well, abortion, things like gay marriage, same-sex marriage, being able to have the right to certain things and calling it an injustice or discrimination, where I'm like, don't confuse the others with the one. And the one that we need to keep the focus on right now for us as Black people, there's no other race, there's no other culture, no other genre that has experienced the depth and the length of racism and inequality than Black people. None. So when people start comparing that stuff on social media and then they make those comments and then you see there's no other race, cultural, genre, gender in the world that has suffered persecution more than Black people. And it pains me when I see these types of comments then on Facebook, and then these are getting like all these likes and all these comments because they're going and saying exactly the opposite of what you, I, and other African American or brown or Black people are saying. And then you have to scratch your head because it's like, wow. I keep saying, I wish there was a word that I could come up with that would, one word that would describe my emotions. I think my emotions are all over the place because I've been very sad. I've been very hopeless. And at times I have asked God, what is it going to take for people to say, no, this is enough. We need equality. What else is it going to take? Like, what else has to happen? I don't know. Do you know what else has to happen to wake? It's, what is there's another saying. I don't want to continue to, like, this is quoting the Bible, but you know, there is the quote. Help me out, Jenny. People who are asleep, that they've just been sleeping, and they need to wake up
Rise
to the
and
word.
shine. Yeah. Rise and shine.
And
Yep.
and so I feel like America has been asleep for over 400 years. But asleep does not mean that they've actually had their eyes closed. I think they've just been in a fog because of such things as white privilege. Everyone who is white has it. Everyone who is white has it. There's not one white person in America who does not have white privilege.
So Aisha,
And
what do you tell to people that are watching this and are white and that are saying, what do you mean white privilege? I've worked hard all my life for everything I have. I've fought to get to where I am, and I don't know what you mean by white privilege. Why don't you try to tell people that are watching what white privilege is from your perspective?
I mean, for me, it's just as simple as a white person and a Black person show up for the job interview.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even need to look at the resume. They show up to the job interview. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, everyone sitting behind that panel has already said to themselves, oh, that Black girl, I wonder what her qualification. And I say that as an example because when I lived in America, over the phone, people just assumed I was white. And then I would show up for the job interviews and they would be like, oh, you're Aisha? And I would say, yes. And so I knew at that point that if they'd seen me first, I wouldn't have had the job interview. Whereas a white person showing up to the interview, there's no questions. Then it goes to their credentials. Then they'll look at the resume. But I feel like there's always that question mark when it's a white person and a black person side by side. There's always that question mark on the black person, like, well, oh, I wonder what her qualifications are. And then they'll start to look at the resume, because I've had it happen so many times, even in the modeling world, because I modeled for most of my life. And it was always like that competition thing, you know. I came, they saw my set card, thinks to me like, well, yeah, the part really isn't, it really isn't for a black person. I'd be like, well, what is the part? You're just standing there holding a product. I don't know, salad dressing. Black people eat salad too. It would be things like this that started to lead me into, wow, I guess there is something, like if you have that white skin, you are just already viewed more as innocent. You are viewed more, you are seen more, you are respected more because of the color of your skin. And as we saw with the video of this woman in the park, she knew, being a white woman, that she could call the police and tell them that she is a white woman and there is a black man harassing her. That to me too is kind of like, where did she come up with that? Because I bet you if you met that woman, I've never met her, but I'm going to make an assumption here. She would be the type of woman that'd be like, oh, I have black friends, or probably works with black people and, you know, says hi to everybody. And you would just assume that she had tendencies that, I don't know what white privilege is. What is that? But then fast forward, and you see her in Central Park saying these things where it's kind of like, again, that's not something that she learned yesterday. That's not something that, you know, she just even was like, oh, I'm going to try this. This to me was white privilege at its best, showing you and showing us, this is the type of power and privilege that we have, that I can make this call, the confidence in her voice in saying what she was saying and doing what she was doing. And she knew without a shadow of a doubt, there would be no consequences.
Yeah, and the only reason there weren't dire consequences was because by the time the policeman got there, they had already left. But when you were describing the situation, and of course, everybody in America, I think, is familiarized with this video, it came to me that for me, the way I look at white privilege is a setup. And that's what systemic racism is the way things are set up. And you're absolutely right. That woman probably never left her house saying, today I'm going to practice systemic racism, but she has been raised in it. And in a moment of tension or madness, where she felt mad that this guy was telling her what to do, she felt, he's black and white, he doesn't need to be telling me what to do. And oh, I have an
here.
Thank you, I'm okay. And I think that's why we have a lot of people, Aisha, that they may not be telling us this, but this is what they're thinking when they see our posts on social media about racism. The thought process is, how much longer are you going to talk about this already? When are you going to start posting about cats? When are you going to start posting beautiful pictures of you? I can acquiesce to those. I don't want to hear about police brutality or racism because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And oh, by the way, it doesn't impact me. And I don't think that any of our white friends or acquaintances consciously think that way. But it's
I don't know.
They woke up white.
I think I think the thing you were saying about the system, you know, where people are like, well, the system has failed. No, as we've all heard and said, the system. Very great. Okay.
Oh, can you show us that beautiful boy? Show us that beautiful boy.
And I have a mixed child, so
let me see.
For any white people going, she's racist. I married a white man. Okay, Aiden, now get out. Thank you.
So did I, for the record.
Yeah, we saw it. Thank you. Yeah, there are many people who make assumptions just by looking at me, and because they see my post, they're like, oh, well, you must be racist and against white people. And I'm like, the difference is I married one. My son is half. Not racist against white people. White people haven't been oppressed for over 400 years. White people have equality in the United States and in the world. But going back to the system, you know, people are like, well, the system has failed. I'm so tired of people saying that, because the system is made
Made out of
exactly
people.
how the system was to work. And it has worked. And I think what people need to start saying is the system just needs to be changed, because it is working, but it is working against us. And it continues to work for non-Black, brown people. And it's, you know, it's really, really interesting when you also look at the whole thing with COVID-19. And if you really do some research and you look at the areas in the United States where it was most highly impacted, it is in more poverty, low income areas in the United States. And those low income and poverty areas are more Black, brown based. Why? Because there's no such thing as equality for Black people in the United States. And it's always been that way. I can think of when I was trying to get a job in New York City. And I went for, I'm really gonna get personal here, but I went through a employment agency, and I came and I filled out my paperwork, and they were like, oh, we don't know, you know, with your types of qualifications. Yeah, well, we'll see. So I always read between the lines. I'm like, okay, I'm reading between the lines on that one. I know there's not many companies that want to hire a Black woman. I know that. But you know, nonetheless, I'm still going to try, because it's usually we get those jobs that nobody else wants to do. You know, the janitor, the bus driver. I had a college education. I'd gone to college, didn't finish, but I'd gone to college. You know, academics pretty well. I was a professional model, very well spoken, according to many white people, because I always have white people telling me that you're so well spoken, and I'm like, opposed to what? Opposed to what? So I remember going on the job interview at a fashion company, and I'll tell you the name in a minute, but I got to tell this background of the story. And I remember coming and sitting down in my cheap, I must have on the cheapest suit I could possibly find. I think I had polyester, it was itching all over. But I sat there for this interview, and they were talking, you know, all hoity-toity and high and mighty, but you know, I was flowing with them. And I had the feeling for them, it was kind of like, well, we're going to do this interview with her, but we have no intentions of pushing her forward. That was the vibe I got. So then I got home, and then like the next day they called and asked me to come back. I was shocked. I was like, oh, wow, they asked me to call back. Ooh, but then, you know, I was like, well, you know, affirmative action, maybe they're going to just, you know, push me so far, and then I'm not going to end up getting the job. So trying to make a long story short, it came down to the final interview, and the final interview was with Ralph Lauren. So this was to work for Polo Ralph Lauren at 625 Madison Avenue, or 650 Madison Avenue, New York. And I came and sat down, met Ralph, and I remember him saying like, well, what's your background? And it kind of threw me off, because I thought, well, what's my background? Can't you see I'm Black? I'm from the ghetto, but that's not what he thought. But, you know, I was kind of like, I wonder where we're going with this. And so I told him, you know, that my father was in the military. My mom had been a stay-at-home mom. She was a singer and gave up her life for her children, and to be a stay-at-home mom. And that I lived in Japan. And he said, wow, he said, you speak impeccably. And he said, and I have to say that your parents did a wonderful job raising you. You're just so well poised. And he said, they can be very proud of you. And I remember sitting there like, wow, like that's such a nice compliment. And so then the assistant came in and he said, she's hired. The look on this woman's face, like, well, you know, like, wait, we still have to talk about this. So he's like, what's to talk about? She's hired. When can you start? And I was like, well, when do you want me to start? And, you know, she was very adamant, like, well, you have to wait. We have to, you know, first talk over the details and everything. So I did get the job, and I dealt 90% of with celebrities every day, all day. That's all I dealt with. Many people consider it a dream job. For me, it was a job. It was a job like any other job. I treated it professionally, respectfully, but people would come when it was time for them to meet Ralph, and I would come out and I'd say, "Hi, I'm Asian." Their eyes shocked. They were always shocked to see like I was black. And I knew that they were thinking that until one day, one person literally was like, yeah, well, I don't know. I was like, you didn't. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm so sorry. It's just the way your voice sounds. And I was like, no need to apologize. I get that a lot. I get that a lot. And then one day, Kanye West came. And Ralph was running late for about an hour and a half. And Kanye and I were sitting there, we were talking about music and stuff. And he was sitting there with his little entourage. And then finally he just said, I gotta ask you a question. How many brothers gotta die? How many more times? How many more times? How many more marches? How many more signs? How many more lives? How many more times? Take a look around, can you see it now? Don't be colorblind, cause when they killing mine, they'll try to justify it. Oh, each and every time, playing in the park, Where are the Black Bill Gates?